Hey there, everybody. It's Choppadong, and I'm back with a little bit of a blog, vlog, video recap type of situation today. NFL made easy. Um, but we're going to talk a little bit about the debacle that was NFL Showdowns last night. And I got to tell you, I am typically a pretty even keeled guy. I think that's why for DFSArmy.com, I make a decent coach. I'm usually pretty positive and upbeat, and I'm looking at the glasses half full, not half empty. Oh, last night really makes me mad. And it's my own doing. And I think we all fall into this as players. And I've been up off and on all night. Stuff usually doesn't bother me like it does tonight. But I got to tell you, I think it comes down to arrogance. And you've got to be arrogant in any competitive endeavor if you want to be good, or arrogant. You've got to have a bit of an ego. You've got to think your shit don't stink to a certain degree. You've got to remain a little humble. It's a fine line and a tough balance. But, you've got to be willing to have conviction. And I think the lineup I constructed last night for showdowns on DraftKings cash lineups definitely had winning chances. But I overlooked something. And texting back and forth with my brother-in-law, it is probably the second or third time. So call me a slow learner. Probably the second or third time I've overlooked this because the ego and the arrogance is getting in the way of thinking that I've built a better mousetrap. And let's kind of talk about where that is, where that falls, because I think that a lot of DFSers can agree. And if this is something that appeals to you, you got to come in, you got to talk with me one-on-one in small groups, whatever, in our Discord channels, because I can fix your game. I can get you pointed in the right direction. I'm a very fundamentally sound guy. Last night notwithstanding. And I've made a living off of helping people become better DFS players. But that is only happening because I'm in the trenches with you. And I'm battling every single day, and I don't have any of this stuff figured out necessarily either. Those that can't do, teach, right? No. I'm a profitable player. I'm a good player. But I got to tell you, I F up just like everybody else once in a while. So I'm going to remind you to like and subscribe to the video. I'm going to remind you use the coupon code CHOP, C-H-O-P, get that 10% off discount in DFSArmy.com. I'm going to remind you that the VIP pricing is there locked in every single month. No commitment beyond the month that you subscribe to. And I'm going to also remind you that DFS Army's NFL box checkers for week 6 will come out again this week. Last week, we used a video and graphical format to explain it, and we nailed some plays really, really well that most people were not really touting through the industry. So that was a good thing. And then I've got a definitive strategy guide for NHL, kicks off tonight. You're going to want to read that if you've never played hockey before. Diversifying across different sports, baseball, football, basketball, hockey, all that stuff helps your game. It helps you learn more about DFS. It helps you play better, helps you strategize better, helps you learn game theory better. Learning cash games versus GPP formats overall makes you a better player, diversifies your bankroll, and smooths out the volatility because I can have a horrible night like I did on Showdowns last night, and I can win an NHL tonight in a totally different mindset. Who knows? But the bottom line is spreading out that risk smooths out that variance. So let's kind of talk about the Showdown lineup. And I want to explain to you what I did last night because I did not use this tool. I hand built the damn thing and I was looking at numbers and whatever else. And I'm of the belief that we can go down this list right here and we can find high floor players. Guys that don't have a lot of risk, guys that are generally going to get us X number of points. And we build the highest lineup we can using those numbers. And that would be Lamar Jackson, Carson Wentz. Your quarterbacks, they touch the ball more than anybody. They control their own destiny. They have the higher floors. You can say what you want about Carson Wentz being crappy and on 2 bum ankles and blah, blah, blah. Fact of the matter is, for a cash game, he has a floor. It's usually 15 to 19 points. He's going to get you in that range a very consistent amount of time. And to be honest with you, you can't say that about wide receivers or tight ends or anybody else that tend to leave you high and dry on occasion. So for a cash game, you're trying to put both quarterbacks in your lineup. Then you can go down to who's next, probably running backs. Jonathan Taylor, workhorse to a degree, running back, takes a couple of receptions, works inside the 10 and inside the red zone. That's great. High floor player. No problems there. The running back committee in Baltimore, good luck. You don't want to be guessing at who's going to get the workload. That's bad for cash games. That's great for tournaments because when you guess right, you usually get lower ownership. It's bad for cash games because you need security, you need stability, you need predictive behavior. You need to know what you're getting. Okay, so if you can't use Baltimore running backs, you usually use quarterback, running back, maybe kicker, because there's only 3 ways to score points in the NFL: basically rushing touchdowns, throwing touchdowns, and kicks. The throwing touchdowns are great, but every team has 2 or 3 receivers that they use. So the way to offset that is to use the damn quarterback because he's involved on every single throwing touchdown. He threw the ball 99.9% of the time. So that's where that floor comes from. So that's creme de la creme. That's the formation you're looking for. And then every slate offers different things, different nuances, like a Travis Kelce, a Darren Waller, a Mark Andrews, or whatever at tight end sometimes has a high floor. A Keenan Allen, a Calvin Ridley typically, Terry McLaurin, some of these guys that have, and I'm leaving some out, DeAndre Hopkins, whatever, that have high floors as receivers. Those guys sometimes work in the place of a committee, like in Arizona. You might use a DeAndre Hopkins as opposed to a Chase Edmonds or a James Conner. You're trying to find that floor, but you'll know who those names are. Lamar Jackson, Carson Wentz, Mark Andrews, probably. Pittman, I don't know. I didn't think he had a floor. Receivers are usually very volatile, as are tight ends. I would give Mark Andrews a higher floor than Michael Pittman. And then, of course, salary considered. Look at Andrews, 6,600 versus Pittman's 9,000. There's a big difference there. Jonathan Taylor, yeah, definitely. Sammy Watkins usually was getting 3 to 5 targets before he got hurt, but Sammy Watkins can be a lame duck. He can be just an injury-prone dude waiting to happen. Marquise Brown was way too expensive, in my opinion. Tucker, floor. Lance Murray, committee. Hines, committee. Tyson Williams, committee. Blankenship, floor. Ravens and Colts defense last night were almost sort of in play. They're getting you 6 to 8 points a game in a lot of cases. So and anything down below that, Paris Campbell, you can't trust that. Jack Doyle, Mo Alley Cox, tournament plays. Marlon Mack, tournament plays. Can't trust them. You don't know what their workload will be. You don't know what their production, what their high danger touches might be. So if you're stuck on these general players up here, you got to kind of rank them. And overwhelmingly, Lamar Jackson is the play. We know this. I know this. You know this. Everybody and their brother knows this. In that whole game, the only one you could really count on producing points was Lamar Jackson. And he had a ceiling, right? So you're thinking he has to be in my lineup. But here's the thing. He becomes cost prohibitive at 12.6. He becomes what, like $18K to put him in the captain spot. And then you're going to have to sacrifice somewhere. Are you going to drop to a Mark Andrews who has a lower floor? Are you going to drop and have to use both kickers? Are you going to be able to use both kickers? Are you going to have to drop a Blankenship or a Tucker and pick up a Naeem Hines? Or, golly, that's not even cheap enough. Something way down low like a defense, or gamble on a Paris Campbell, run a Le'Veon Bell if he would have been announced as active. A Rashad Bateman and a total punt, whatever. These kinds of things definitely matter. But when you're looking at the projected ownerships, it usually tells you the key. And that's where I missed. Bad. I was so intent on getting Lamar and Carson Wentz and Jonathan Taylor and possibly both kickers, searching for another higher floor, that I was looking for any combination that got all of that in the same lineup. And what I missed was how dominant Lamar Jackson was going to be owned. And the fact, and I was already expressing this concern late last night as we were building, that Lamar should probably be in the captain. But it forces sacrifice somewhere else. I'm more comfortable putting Lamar in a flex, going with somebody else in a captain, and it wasn't Wentz and it wasn't Jonathan Taylor because those guys were also very, very expensive. It could have been a Mark Andrews, but it's a tight end. I felt Sammy Watkins had the higher floor. So I put Sammy in and you go, oh no. Yeah, don't be results oriented. I mean, oh no, in hindsight, it worked out terribly. Through the first half of the game, though, it was smashing absolutely everything when everyone was tilting over Lamar. And I'm thinking, oh my God, if I get a horrible game out of Lamar, I'm good. My worry going into the game was if Lamar puts up, say, 20 points, 20's hard, 25, I'm toast. Because so many people are going to have him in the captain spot. At 25, he's going to get the 1.5x on DraftKings, get to 40 points. And that 15-point gap cannot be made up unless Sammy scores. Or unless somebody else does some serious damage that other people don't have. And you're not playing cash games for low ownership. So you're not very often going to have that guy that has enough low ownership that he can make that up. Jonathan Taylor was actually in a really, really good spot and doing a lot of damage and doing that for me until Lamar went off. If you'd have told me he was going to potentially get 40, 45 points, I would have said he has to be in the captain spot. There's no way. You can't overcome a 20 or 25 point gap, right? That's one thing to think about with showdowns, is that 1.5x gap. Can you survive Josh Allen going off? Can you survive Lamar Jackson going off? I don't believe that the quarterback has to be in the captain spot on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I do believe he probably does. But on DraftKings, no. You can oftentimes go with the favored running back, or you can step down a smidge and find a Keenan Allen or find somebody that might be a little bit cheaper, put them in the captain spot, take a good portion of points at 1.5x, keep your salary down after the 1.5x in kind of the 12 to 13K range, and roster a good high floor team around that. You're not 5 with a punt, you're kind of all 6 with a floor. I think that's a better philosophy. What gets in the way last night was ownership. When you look at ownership, 90% owned, that's fine. But if I come over to the captain spot, 35% owned, and that's in tournaments. He was 65% owned in the captain spot in cash games. And that turned on the light bulb where I went, oh my God, how dumb was I? I was not thinking about building with ownership. In cash games, we want to go with the herd. There's safety with the herd. At 65% ownership, it doesn't matter what Lamar does, good or bad, doesn't matter. That's the key factor I missed. That's where the arrogance came in. I went in a completely different direction, forewent the principal foundation of building cash games, which is if a guy is over 40 to 50% owned, you can still win cash games if he does. He doesn't hurt you anymore. And God forbid he has a ceiling game. If he has a ceiling game at 65% ownership, you cannot win without him. You can't win without him, especially in a showdown at a 1.5x. And that's what happened last night. And hopefully it finally hit me hard enough in the head that I'm going to learn that going forward. I'll be a better coach going forward. I will advise people better going forward. But we all mess up. We all have our missteps. We all let our egos get in the way a little bit. I do believe that we should be looking to alternative lines. We should be looking for, if you just build straight cash, straight ownership, straight chalk, your floor is high, your ceiling is capped. You have no ceiling. If you're 5 or 10 points behind at halftime, you ain't coming back. You don't have enough, you don't have anybody at low enough ownership to leapfrog anyone on the leaderboard. You're just going to be behind all night long. That's a problem. You need to be a little bit under that super, super chalky build, about 10% under. Say projected ownership's 175. You need to be in the 150 to 160 range. If you're at that level, you've got at least something that can save your butt if you fall a little bit behind. But that gets away from, again, the prime principle, which is when somebody is that highly owned in the captain spot, you just eat it and move on. Figure the rest of the lineup out. It's going to come down to your punt versus that guy's punt. You're choosing a receiver over that guy's receiver, whatever. As we dig in and we learn more about cash game showdown formats, we want to stick to the ultimate formula, which is 2 QBs, 2 running backs, and 2 kickers. And we want to deviate from that only when it makes sense to do so. But sometimes it makes sense to do so when you have to put the highest priced player in the captain spot. There's no way around that. And I missed it. I apologize. I'll pour one out for myself. I'll wear one for the team. My bankroll took a humongous hit last night. It's going to take weeks to repair that damage. But we're still going to get there because that's what we do. Come and say, you want the truth? You want the honest? You want it right between the eyes? Even when I'm criticizing myself, you come inside to dfsarmy.com and you learn from guys that are doing it. Don't just take a touts word for it. Don't just go buy a lineup. Come and learn to build your own, because I'll teach you some secrets that'll get you just underneath, get you a little bit of leverage, not necessarily in cash games, but enough in leagues and whatnot that's going to make you an upside player that will repair damage from cash games when your cash games go wrong. Use the coupon code CHOP to do so, CHOP. Friends don't let friends pay retail. Come inside and talk to me. We got hockey coming tonight. We got NFL Week 6 starting off. Busy week. Let's go.